I've been watching depressing things. The effects have been superb. Some would say recommended. Now I'm gonna give those to you. Welcome back to the series where I watch 4 disturbing documentaries. A lot of these coming from your suggestions. Today I watched Pervert Park, The Price of Honor, The Emperor's Naked Army Marches On, and Into the Deep. Real quick, my collab channel with my buddy and editor Scout might need you.
Hey guys, Jungle Mist is currently looking for talented editors.
If you're already familiar with the content and the editing style, that's a huge plus, and we'd love to see your work.
Please email junglemistbiz@gmail.com with examples of your editing work, and please have it be recent work.
Let's hear a word from today's sponsor and then we'll get to it. Timestamps below.
I love Factor. They also happen to be today's sponsor. I don't know how many times I need to tell you this, but I'll tell you it whenever I got the chance. Factor's chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals legitimately helped me lose weight. Their calorie smart options were perfect when I was hungry, but I wasn't trying to destroy the calorie deficit I was working on. And their protein plus options helped me keep the gains fed. They'll ask me what meals I want for the sponsorship. And honestly, at this point, I don't care, Factor. You can send me whatever you want. You can almost certainly do no wrong. I decided to try their grilled pork chop and smoked cheddar cauli grits. These guys are good. Conveniently shipped to your door right on your schedule. Head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code 50MistaGG to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first Factor box. That's code 50MistaGG at factor75.com to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. And thank you, Factor, for sponsoring this video.
Ma'am, what is your address? Ma'am.
If you've kept up with this series, Goodnight Sugar Babe was one of the more jarring documentaries that I've seen. Because the story itself was horrible, but the documentary surrounding it was difficult to follow, teetering on offensive at times, and just overall really amateurish. The Price of Honor is not quite as bad, but if I had to pick a doc as a comparison, this one is probably it. So because of that, immediately, I don't love this documentary. I think it just takes too long. It should have been an hour 20 as opposed to an hour 45. Although, as always, I am glad that the story was told. The Price of Honor covers the story of Sarah and Amina Saeed, 2 girls who grew up with a father, Yasser Saeed, who would ruin them and take everything from them. Their mother, Patricia, is in the picture as well. She's interviewed, talks to us about everything, and you don't know it yet. So this may sound harsh. It may even sound harsh after you know it. Patricia is a fucking waste of a person. And don't get me wrong, I'm not comparing the two. Yasser deserves the absolute worst that this world can bring, but don't be fooled by the grieving mother on screen. This doc really puts the viewer in a tough spot because I gave her as much lenience as I possibly could, because we've talked about people in abusive relationships before, where it's very easy for the audience to say, why didn't she leave? Why didn't she try this? Why didn't she do that? And it's rarely that simple. So as frustrated as I became with Patricia as I heard her start to, with shown evidence, lie to us, and also still somewhat somehow defend Yasser's honor, I tried to remember. Patricia married Yasser when she was just 15 years old, and Yasser was about 30. She would have 3 kids by the time she was 18. Yasser was abusive, controlling, tried to distance Patricia from her family, and was unfaithful on numerous occasions. You throw all of that at a 15, 16, 17-year-old kid who is now having kids of her own. I can't imagine the type of damage that would cause somebody, so I'm holding that there. And yet, she still managed to make me turn on her. And it doesn't even really take that long, because very early into the doc, we start with some of the worst. The 2 young girls come forward at one point and accuse Yasser of sexually assaulting them in detail. They are 8 and 9 years old. Patricia calls CPS and takes the girls to the hospital to get them examined, and they apparently discover no evidence from those examinations, but that does not rule out sexual abuse. The police take Yasser in for questioning, and he was apparently very upset that he was even being questioned about this, so much so that he started harassing Patricia's parents and calling them nonstop at all hours of the night, threatening them, driving by their home, and he was actually arrested for retaliation. But eventually, the girls would tell police that they lied, that they made the whole thing up, and the police now had nothing. Through the testimonials of Patricia's sisters and aunt, we hear that Amina wrote a letter to Connie, her aunt, telling her that they were being forced to tell the police that they lied. By who? Well, it sounds like Yasser and Patricia. Patricia would also find out about that letter, go searching for it in Connie's house, and then take that evidence away. Shortly after, Yasser and the family leave the state for a while, and then leave the country for a while. All very normal things to do after being accused of something like that. They go to Egypt, and while in Egypt, Yasser begins planning to find a husband for Amina, to, as they say, whoever was essentially the highest bidder. And Amina obviously didn't want to get married off to some 40-year-old man, but Yasser made it clear that she didn't really have a choice. Patricia's interview bits are constantly spliced in right after a testimonial, or multiple, or just a straight-up police report that is saying the complete opposite of what she's about to claim. One example, out of many, Amina was beaten. Once Yasser discovered that she was talking to a boy, he kicked her in the stomach, kicked her in the face, messing up her braces. The clip right after with Patricia, she never had braces. He apparently even messed with one of Patricia's younger sisters who would take care of the kids, and she was terrified to go there now because of Yasser. And the best Patricia's got is like, yeah, I've heard bits and pieces, but I don't know. Okay. Assuming this isn't deceptive cherry picking of the interview, any thoughts on that, Patricia? Not even a lazy ass, oh, that sounds horrible if it did happen. Like, I don't know if the whole ignorant bullshit act is a defense. You can't admit that you knew about all of these things because it would make you look terrible for staying through incident after incident, even though, in my opinion, the line makes you look worse. Patricia actually says in one of the interviews, honestly, I don't believe Yasser would abuse his daughters. And if you know this story already, you know how fucking insane that sounds to say. He never abused his daughters, he just abused me. Is that really that difficult to bridge in your mind? She even randomly tells us a story about Yasser fucking killing a dude. Like, waited for a guy, ran him over, then killed him, and his dad got him out of it somehow. And you know this story. He's capable of fucking murder. Trying to pull back, is she traumatized? Is she still brainwashed, sticking up for him when she doesn't have to? I won't eliminate that from playing a part, but Jesus. There's a clip in this doc. I'm not gonna show it. I was kind of thrown off that this was even in the doc, let alone exist. It's a clip of Yasser, who apparently always had a video camera on him, and he recorded a ton of stuff, especially his daughters, sometimes in secret, spying on them from afar. The girls are trying to sleep and he's annoying them, and he's zooming in on their feet, making remarks like, nice legs. He tells his son Islam to snatch the blanket off of one of them, which Islam does, as he continues to make inappropriate remarks while zooming in on their backside. It is very fucking uncomfortable to watch. And it's not like this recording was done secretly. This was in the morning, on camera, with the son present. December 26, 2007. Patricia, Amina's friend Eddie, Sarah, and her boyfriend Eric run away to Kansas. It was originally just gonna be the girls and their friends, but Patricia decided to tag along because she too wanted to get away from Yasser. Patricia meets with her aunt, Jill, and tells her, I will not return to Yasser because if I do, he will kill the girls. In fact, she even told the police she was afraid that Yasser would severely hurt her daughter. So she stays at Jill's a few hours, quickly changes her mind and says, we're going to Tulsa, for whatever reason, to find a house to rent there. Now, Yasser always kept a close eye on his daughters, their communications, who they were with, so when they left, they destroyed their SIM cards to avoid any type of tracking. They got an apartment under an assumed name. However, Yasser would not act alone in trying to bring them back home. Islam isn't mentioned all that much in the first half of the doc, but I just couldn't help but have a side eye for him because it doesn't sound like he was facing any abuse. I didn't get that impression, and I would be very surprised if he were never present for any of the abuse that his sisters faced, especially since he was the oldest. I just kept thinking that Yasser was raising a chip off the old block with Islam. While the girls are gone, Islam is calling his aunts, talking about, oh, I miss my sisters. I wish they would come back home. I couldn't imagine why they wouldn't want to be here. Yassine, Yasser's brother, is also making calls, sending emails, telling them, hey, if you don't feel comfortable with Yasser here, we'll take care of it. We'll make sure that he's not. I'm sure, Yassine. The girls haven't had the best things to say about their uncles up to this point, by the way. I can't imagine whose side they might be on. And also, Amina starts to worry around this time because Patricia starts to feel guilty for abandoning her husband. The poor guy. I hear you, Patricia. I'm sure Yasser's feelings are at least in the top 40 things you should be worried about right now. After Yassine is able to make contact with Patricia, contact is then made to Yasser. Patricia tells us Sarah talked to Yasser first, then she did, then Amina did, and that they all agreed to go back to Texas. And as far as we're told, that is not true. Amina did not know anything about this. They were going back to Texas, but Amina thought it was to visit her aunt, to put flowers on her grandmother's gravestone. And they don't really clarify as to why Sarah agreed to this, or even if she really did. It sounds like she vaguely did. Maybe she just wasn't as combative as Amina. Keep in mind, Amina seems to be more targeted than Sarah. It definitely sounds like Amina got the brunt of the abuse for one reason or another. That's not to say Sarah is favored by any means, but more so that Amina was despised. So Patricia has now returned to Yasser and is not returning to Tulsa. Patricia then begins to blow Amina's phone up, begging her to come home. Amina refuses, terrified of what Yasser might do. But Patricia continues on, blowing up her phone, and eventually just drives to her in person because she knows where she is and pleads for her to come home. And ends up persuading Amina to go with her. By Amina's communication, it sounds like she just kind of accepted her fate. And right around this point, Patricia also says that Amina asked to come home. She wanted to come home. That's why she went to go pick her up. And that's the shit right there that pisses me off. Why are you lying? Why are you subtly shifting the blame to your daughters? So she returns, and then later Yasser says that he wants to take the girls out for dinner, but just them. So he loads them up in his taxi cab, and at one point during their drive, Sarah would be shot 9 times, and Amina would be shot twice. Somehow, Sarah would be able to dial 911 and actually speak to an operator and tell them, "My dad shot me. I'm dying." The 2 girls would pass, and the taxi cab would later be found abandoned, with the 2 girls still in there. And just in case you haven't been quite sold on the Patricia thing, here's a clip.
Who would think that their father would kill them?
There are a lot of things I'm skipping over here, but I think what's important to point out is that Yasser somehow perfectly fled this scene. This was obviously planned, more than likely with the help of others, and he would actually get away, remain at large, and eventually find himself on the FBI's most wanted list. We do hear Sarah's call to 911. I refuse to play it here, especially with the editing in the doc where they insert these gunshots that are ringing out with this cheesy villainous music in the background. Come on. Now, it was at this point in the doc where I thought, terrible story, I hate everybody, this sucks. Why is there still an hour left in this doc? Well, I haven't brought up Joseph, Amina's boyfriend, who she would be in contact with constantly. There's a lot of focus on their connection, even though at one point early on, they just aren't able to see each other anymore, but we talk with him a lot. Ruth, Joseph's mother, ends up speaking to Amina a lot more later on, and you can tell she genuinely cares about the girls and their safety. So those are pretty big chunks in the beginning and also some of the end. After the killings, we dive into the topic of honor killings. A murder committed by the family due to cultural beliefs, like of somebody bringing dishonor to the family, killing them to then restore that honor to the family, or a woman or girl usually being the victim. Now, I don't mind this quickly being touched on, but it's essentially a theory at the end of the day. Although you'll see many news outlets refer to this theory when describing the crime. I personally think Yasser was just a monster who killed his 2 daughters, I'm sure with some cultural beliefs intertwined in terms of disapproval of their lifestyles. But with all due respect to the purpose of spreading awareness of honor killings, I don't care to speculate on it too much. It really doesn't change the story to me. Although we do spend a decent amount of time talking about it in this doc. Like after the killings, I remember having the thought, oh, is this the second half? Have we now morphed into like a quasi-PSA? It is 7 straight minutes that just feel out of place, but I get it. Like the film is called The Price of Honor. So clearly you were gonna have to address honor killings, but especially right after the story of them being murdered, it didn't fit for me. Credit to the director, she does start visiting the houses of the Saeed brothers to get a statement from them for this documentary, and she's eventually met with death threats, so she pulls back. We then start to poke around at Patricia and everything she has lied about publicly. And yeah, she contradicts herself dozens of times, almost shockingly so. She's got some sketchy pieces of evidence out there. In one way, the doc could just be like a montage of her fucking lying. But I just don't even want to look at this person anymore. They're not in prison, nor will they be. Apparently, the police department did a shit job investigating everything initially anyway. I mean, you can say that the operator for sure dropped the ball when Sarah called. It's hard to listen to because he's essentially ignoring Sarah's pleads. I don't think they heard "my dad shot me." I think they just heard someone yelling, I'm dying, and they just, I don't know if they didn't care. I have no idea. It's really upsetting to listen to because it just ends up seeming like everybody let those girls down. And we end with, I'm so sorry for what I'm about to say. It's a very awkward, quasi-comedic scene where Joseph's mother, who does care about these girls, goes to drop flowers off at their graves. But there's this fucking triumphant, angelic chorus bellowing in the back as she does this. And the whole scene goes on for far too long as she's talking to herself and saying her thoughts out loud. And this is with cuts. She even mentions how shitty this Muslim cemetery looks, which was a point of discussion earlier with Patricia deciding to bury them there because her sisters were like, don't do it here. Like, the grass is all gross. There's no flowers growing. Like, don't do that to them. She did. I'm sure this sounds mean, but here's a clip. Tell me if I'm crazy.
I don't even know what this place is. I mean, look at it.
It's definitely the music. It's the music. If we remove that music, it drastically changes this scene. It's just clashing. Man, why would you put that in there? How did you put that in there and listen to it like, it's so triumphant. This isn't triumph. This is sadness. I don't understand how someone puts that in there, listens, watches it back, and they're like, fucking boost it up, baby. What? One thing I noticed after I read the blurb, and it was like Sarah and Amina Saeed, I realized we don't talk about Sarah really at all. She's kind of in this doc by association. Amina seemed to be the only vocal one, with a lot of her letters, emails, calls, because at the end of the doc, I just don't really know much about Sarah. I don't know what she thought of all of this. And maybe she just never shared anything, so we don't have anything to go off of. But this is very much a story told through Amina. And that's the doc. But there is a development post-doc. An apparent sighting of Yasser in 2017 in an apartment that Islam stayed at. It appears that he escaped right from under them when they tried raiding the place, but evidence did support that he was staying there. So even though that let him know that he was in Texas, it wouldn't be for another 3 years in 2020 that police were running surveillance on a home in Justin, Texas, that Islam and Yassine would show up to. Eventually the surveillance would see another man inside. They would collect some evidence and arrest Yasser Saeed on August 26th, 2020. Over 12 years since he murdered his daughters. He was sentenced to life in prison, and thankfully Islam and Yassine were also arrested, 10 and 12 years for them. I'm not sure if he got any more room for frustration here. Yasser denies killing them, and he fought in court for it. Didn't work out, obviously. I also saw there was an interview with Yasser on Court TV, Interview with a Killer, just last year. And as much as I didn't want to waste 44 minutes listening to Yasser stupidly plead his innocence, I listened to 44 minutes of Yasser stupidly pleading his innocence. I guess he says this is all political stunt. People trying to get political points off this one. A similar defense to what was said in court. They were like, oh, this was a post 9/11 world. They had it out for this Muslim man in 2008. He says what really happened was that he thought he was being followed while driving the girls. So he ditched the taxi, left the girls in it, and ran away. He thought he was being targeted, that someone wanted to kill him, so he thought leaving the girls that they would be safe. But then apparently whoever was trailing them killed the girls, and then he never said anything about it. He didn't attend the funeral, and he remained in hiding for 12 years because he thought he wouldn't get a fair trial because of the way things looked. How might they explain away the 911 call that says, "My dad shot me"? The defense argued that Sarah was possibly hallucinating after being shot multiple times on that 911 call. So she misspoke when she said, "My dad shot me." He sucks. He's rotting in prison. Good riddance. Is it disturbing? Yes, it's very disturbing. The entire story is disturbing. The clips they show are disturbing. We're fucking seeing people get like murdered when they're talking about honor killings. It's disturbing. Next doc, please.
Into the Deep was honestly, am I wearing black in front of a fucking black screen? This is the type of production quality you can expect from a Mista Juju channel. This looks fucking stupid. Does the denim jacket change anything? No, I just look like a fucking West Side Story stand-in now. Okay, never mind. Into the Deep was honestly a breath of fresh air in this lineup, which I'm sure sounds as bad as I think it does. But this documentary was concise, presented the story in an interesting way, had a lot of valuable footage. Got me in, got me out. If you're looking for a murder doc while you eat your dinner, this is the one. Copenhagen, Denmark. Peter Madsen was an entrepreneur, inventor, daredevil. He would build things with a group of highly competent interns and volunteers, and then he would test him, oftentimes with himself. And the next goal on hand was to, in fact, launch himself into space. His team, although unpaid, love him, are inspired by him. He's all about living life the way he wants to live it. We're all gonna die, but at least he'll be able to look back and be like, well, I did all this crazy shit that I wanted to do. We both met the same fate. Now, the teensy-weensy problems we can point to as of right now are minimal. Like, for example, Peter's got ops. And you know what they say, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Peter's sworn enemies are literally the next building over. Just old men on their lawns yelling at each other. This was a company he used to work with where they basically started to minimize his position and push him back from the front lines on the experiments, but that's not how he rolls. These were apparently his ideas. He wanted to be the pilot as well. So he dipped out and started his own gig. Like, you know the US-Russia space race? That's this, but like 100 feet away from each other. I'm not kidding. Look how close they are. They're both just out together. Just fucking mid-wrench turn. One of the tests go well. Let's talk about Emma Sullivan, the director. She has to join Peter and document everything for a project. And at one point through the documentation, Peter is declared missing as they lose contact with his submarine. But Peter is not alone. Journalist Kim Wall is also missing. Last seen joining Peter in his submarine to interview him. And we get the live reaction of his crew hearing the news, the very people who saw him last. Now this starts to look like a terrible submarine incident that took 2 lives until Peter is spotted and picked up, telling authorities the submarine sank, but that no one was on board with him. According According to him, he had dropped Kim off earlier before the sub sank. However, with Kim's boyfriend and family not hearing from her, after Peter is picked up, he is taken straight into custody. And immediately, the crew kinda puts the cope in Copenhagen, because this is their guy. Some of them 100% confident he would never do such a thing. Some confused as to why the authorities are even looking at him, which, who the hell else are we supposed to ask? Now, what did you see? But also, credit to them, they're trying to find Kim in the location that Peter said he dropped her off at. They're trying to find her and therefore help clear Peter. But as soon as more details start to come out, they are loyal, but not foolish. Peter started by saying he dropped her off. The sub then had an issue, sank, and he made it out alive. Then they had actually recovered the submarine, and it had nobody inside of it, and they continued to search for Kim's body. However, Peter now said that Kim died in a terrible accident on board, and he buried her at sea, which I think one of his crew members asked a very important question to that claim. Why? Why bury her at sea? That doesn't make any sense, Peter. One of his mates actually looking at the recovered sub, telling us how obvious it was, just by looking at the outside, that the sub was purposely sunk. Kim's torso was found right around the same area where Peter was picked up. The torso was stabbed, seemed like someone attempted to take the air out of the lungs, along with strapping metal to the body to help it sink. Luckily, the ocean had other plans. Peter changes his story again. He says while lifting the hatch for Kim, it slips and hits her head. And although he is changing his story, this claim cannot be verified at the time. Obviously, from our perspective, Peter is guilty. He has clearly dismembered her body, attempted to hide the evidence, but we don't know how she exactly died. And we don't know why Peter might have done it. Because of that, I guess he can technically walk away from all of this somewhat scot-free, with perhaps only the charge of desecration of a corpse. And Peter must know this, because here he is, continuously changing his story, attempting to send the authorities on a goose chase. They eventually recover Kim's head, and after examination, they discover no blunt force trauma to the skull, quickly destroying that whole hatch story, which sounded stupid to begin with. So Peter finally owns up to it and says, all right, she died of carbon monoxide poisoning. Stop interrogating him. Cut his mic. You guys got better luck just figuring out the rest on your own. This guy's a fucking idiot. And thankfully now, the real details start to seep in. They find snuff films on Peter's computer. Videos of women being choked, cut up. In fact, the day before the murder, Peter was randomly asking another crew member if he had ever seen videos like that, where he could watch them if he wanted to. Seemed to be something he was into, which started to paint more of a motive. But why Kim Wall specifically? The unfortunate answer to that seems to be purely chance. Peter had actually messaged another woman in his crew to join him on the submarine the next day because it was riding so well, as he says. Apparently, he even asked the director to also join him on the sub right around the same time. Kim Wall just happened to be the person that agreed to do it earlier, so she could get her interview and attend her going away party that night, as she was planning to move to Beijing. And as you can tell, no men were invited at the time. It seems like whatever woman was the first to join Peter in that sub would lose their life in a similar terrifying fashion. Peter would also bring tools on board, including a wood saw, which he would obviously have zero reason to bring on board. All of these details helped paint the picture and would hopefully help solidify a conviction. Now, before we get there, I have to tell you my small conundrum, if you will. And we'll start with this. This woman, who was one of the women invited on the sub, who fully trusted Peter, one day texted him that, oh, I'm working so slow, I need some motivation. You gotta send me some death threats, Peter, to keep me in line, haha. So he does, and describes having her bound in the submarine, stabbing her, his murder plan fully ready. Clearly, he has given this thought, but at the time it just seemed like a joke. At least that's what she says, because me reading that shit, even if it was pre-arrest, like if a friend of mine showed me these texts from her boss, her friend, and was like, haha, isn't he so funny? No, I'm looking at your throat, ellipses, where is the pulse? But you asked for a jokey death threat, not snuffy fan fiction. There's no lulz, no emojis. It wouldn't even help that much, but this man is sick. And here's my problem, which is gonna sound weird. There are so many examples like this where Peter says something, which in hindsight sounds like foreshadowing. Saying things like, oh, I'm gonna kill somebody in many different ways. We will go down as the greatest criminals. I've had practice with spoofing authorities. Why would I be honest with someone who's interrogating me? The doc even ends with him randomly discussing human predators living among us. psychopaths, who are great speakers. He's a great speaker. Who are persuasive. He's quite persuasive. No regard for others. I would assume so at this point. And does the psychopath know that they're a psychopath? So you look at all of that in one of two ways. Either he's speaking out loud, these are his thoughts. It's funny to joke about killing other people because I'm actually capable of it. You see this in other docs where they'll find the one scene in old family footage of the dad joking about killing the mother, or he jokingly holds a knife up to her or some shit. And you can look at this as him unraveling, starting to be consumed by these thoughts, this addiction, sexual addiction, whatever way you want to phrase it. And he's just starting to slowly tell on himself, maybe without even realizing it. And finally, it all builds up to the day he cracks and commits a horrible crime. Then you could look at it in this way, where he knows exactly what he's doing. And this is really all a game to him, because he knows this is being documented. He knows this will all be published. He knows the attention this will garner. He is trying to make a film. And this one's a bit more out there, I realize that. But that's how I started to feel at times. It could just be because the director got so much footage that she was able to reference these moments a lot more than the average documentary can. Or maybe he didn't think about this at the very beginning, but at some point discovered his endgame and patiently moved towards it, giving away clues so this could all be a part of it. This theory specifically just made me feel gross while watching it because it felt like this is what he wanted. Like, I understand, it sounds silly, it was just a thought, I had to bring it up because I've never really gotten this feeling in any other doc. Anyway, plenty of his crewmates ended up testifying against him, which really helped the case, and Peter was charged with murder, indecent handling of a corpse, and sexual assault, sentenced to life. The buildup is great in this doc because as we uncover all the gruesome details, we finally arrive at the footage recorded the day of the murder, which is insane. You're looking at him, thinking, this man will do the most heinous shit later this evening. In fact, just this morning, before the film crew shows up, Googling the words beheading, girl, agony, rewatching a video of a girl getting her throat cut. You don't have to believe the second theory I said, that he had known this end goal for a while, but he 1000% knew it right here, being interviewed by one of his potential victims. Seeing him randomly grip this metal pipe, even knowing the eventual outcome, it's terrifying to watch. Is it disturbing? It's hard to say no. It's really much more gripping than anything. Worth a watch in my opinion. And also, I guess he attempted to escape prison in 2020 and actually kind of got away from the prison, but then got caught. Next doc. You want to do this one? Thought so. Pervert Park focuses on the Palace Mobile Home Park in St. Petersburg, Florida, which at least around the time housed over 100 convicted sex offenders. And we speak to a handful of them, listen in on their counseling sessions, watch them live their day-to-days, and then we leave. I don't think the doc heavily leans one way or another. I think it more so is just asking you the question. Have you ever considered giving a second thought to a sex offender and their past trauma, their rehabilitation, their uphill battle to becoming a functioning member of society again? Because everybody you speak to in the doc has more or less served their time already. So yes, they are all registered sex offenders, but they want people to know that they're not just that. And this is obviously a very, very difficult conversation to present to an audience. Humanizing sex offenders. Now, a variety of crimes can force you to register as a sex offender, and that's exactly what we get here today. All different stories, different backgrounds, and each story is delivered to us in a specific way. And I think it's a very interesting experiment in the way they do it, because one story will throw you into the deep end. This is what I did. And then we hear how it happened, and then maybe we hear more about the person themselves. Another story, we'll learn about someone's terrible upbringing, their current day-to-day life, their current impact on their community, and then why they are there. I do think the doc is good for what it's trying to present. I mean, it's also just interesting in general. Like, why the fuck do these guys have their own declared land? Why is there a Waffle House and then Tentacle Acres for pedophiles? It's apparently because of a Florida Justice Transitions program, which helps transition felons, particularly sex offenders it looks like, back into society, helping them find housing, like this trailer park. So they just fucking, I guess that's the point. And the park is labeled as an adult-only community. There are no families here. It should go without saying, these stories are terrible. As of right now, I don't know how much detail I'll go into. Even if I'm being vague, it's pretty bad. You have been warned. Our main narrator is William here. He He is the maintenance and security for the trailer park, and we get a little blurb from him to start, but the first crime we hear from is this guy. And I think he's first for a reason. I think it's almost like the doc telling us, we're not trying to hide anything. We're not trying to ease you into what these people did. Here is a despicable crime committed by one of the residents. His actions are exactly what you imagine when you think of the worst our society has to offer. This guy doesn't have a sob story as to how he got here, doesn't speak of any redeeming qualities. This is one of the worst offenses you'll hear in the doc to start, and then you'll hear from everybody else and their stories. I almost don't even want to repeat some of these things, but we're here. I'm assuming you'd like to know. You skipped the ad, but you're not skipping this. This guy, as he puts it, had a girl he was interested in, and she rejected him. He talks about constantly wanting sex with his past girlfriends prior to this, but the way he words this one, it sounds like a stranger or maybe an acquaintance that he asked for sex turned him down. So he says he was angry and he had nothing else to do. So he drove down to Mexico and spent hours looking for a prostitute or a red light district, only getting angrier as time went on. That's when he spotted a young girl with her cousin walking home. He kidnapped her, got her in his car, and drove off. The cousin actually alerted the family and they were able to chase him for a bit, but he lost them. He then raped that girl, and that girl was 5 years old. Now, I don't need to echo your thoughts. It's impossible to hear that and then think, okay, now how do we help him? When I'm sure the majority of you are thinking, violence. Or at the very least, I don't care how much time you spend in prison, that wasn't enough. And I don't want to go into everybody's story in full detail. I will mention a young guy who got to catch a predator. He was caught up in an online sting. He says he was just on Craigslist looking for prostitutes, and the only one who responded was a cop, pretending to be a 30-year-old woman, who then asked to involve her 14-year-old daughter in the meetup. That's apparently not what he was looking for, but he eventually incriminated himself with what he says was just one message. Just one. After the cop kept pushing to involve this supposed teenager. Now, I don't have all their documents on hand. It's obviously possible that these people can lie or make themselves look a bit better when they're telling their story. Although I do want to point out, I believe the directors verified everything these people said with their counselor to make sure that they weren't just directly lying to the audience. But still, Tracy here is the worst story, and it's not close. I know that sounds crazy after the first story I just told you. There are like 14 separate things that are terrible, with each one being slightly worse than the last. Even though William's our main narrator, I'm gonna skip his story because I will not have the capacity to tell you another one after this one. So here we go. When Tracy was young, her dad would sexually abuse her. He would have her go clean his room, telling her he loved her, and he just wants to share this with her. It would happen so often that sometimes all it took was a song on the radio to trigger her father to call her to his room. Tracy confirms that other men that her mom dated also touched her, remembering a certain one doing it because she was already, quote, damaged goods, so what's one more guy? And she says eventually her body wanted those same feelings when she wasn't having them, so she would have sex with her cousins and was beaten for it by her aunt. She craved sex with anybody and everybody. She was put in 5 different homes between 2nd grade and 5th grade. When she was just 11 years old, she started sleeping with a 16-year-old and visiting the doctor for a concern. They told her they needed to put her to sleep and give her an exam. She was bleeding, but they said she was all right, although it appeared that her insides were messed up because of what had been done to her. And eventually she discovered that day they gave her an abortion, and she didn't even know it. She met another man and surprisingly got pregnant. He then tried to run her over with his car while she was pregnant. She left him. Next year married Steve. And then her son Dustin was born. And right around this time she was drinking heavily, so she doesn't remember Dustin's first words, first steps. It's all a blur. And this is when she decided to meet up with her dad again and started sleeping with him again. When Dustin was 8, she stopped sleeping with her dad, and she told all of this to a guy that she was talking to online, Dominic. And as odd as it sounds, this was a tough time for her. And Dominic told her, listen, I'll take care of you. I'll take care of Dustin. I'll send you the money that you so desperately need. I'll take you away from all of this. All you have to do is ask Dustin if he'll have sex with you and let me watch. Tracy refused, but continued drinking, continued spiraling. Dominic continued promising the world, and eventually Dominic got his wish. Dustin would later tell the kids at the YMCA that he had slept with his mom. They would tell an adult, and they called the police, and they stopped Tracy from picking Dustin up that day. They took him to a group home where she could see him under supervision, and the last time she saw him, she apologized to him for what she did, which was something that she always wanted from her father but never got. Dustin would later offend at 13 on a 3-year-old boy, and apparently at the time of the doc, he was locked up for armed robbery, continuing this horrific cycle. Ugh. My mind needs clarity. Pervert Park is a rather short watch. It doesn't really overstay its welcome. There are some interesting conversations had between the residents, like the topic of their crime being a crime of opportunity versus something they knowingly or unknowingly were setting up. I don't think this doc is going to change many minds, but at the very least, I think it will give you pause to at least consider the issue at one point during the runtime. I personally very much struggle to show compassion to these people, but hearing a story like Tracy's, it is difficult to 100% demonize her, writing off her upbringing. Her life was fucking terrible. The worst of the worst were the closest people to her. And she was a kid. What the fuck was she supposed to do? Who was there to help her? Who was there to stop the cycle of abuse? Then you get to what she did, and you think, what the fuck is wrong with you? But the answer is that. All of that. That's what's wrong with her. I've said before, after you cross the line, I stopped caring about how you got there. And I do still feel that way, even after the doc. Every story I heard did not emit the same reaction from me. The majority were met with nothing except disgust. And it's tough because whenever this conversation is presented, it's always the same exact question in rebuttal. What if it was your son, your daughter, your niece? And at that point, all compassion is lost, because there is now a handful of people thinking, I'd fucking kill them. It's a losing battle for these people. Not only because of that, but also because they all get lumped in the same. Outside of this documentary, how often are you listening to a registered sex offender tell you their story? If there was a room of 20 sex offenders, they're all instantly the worst of the worst. I don't care to hear you out. Let a boulder run through this bitch. It's not an easy conversation to present to an audience, but they tried. That's all you can say. They tried, and it's not a fucking easy watch. To end this on not the most negative note of all time, there's a point where William broke the fourth wall and started playing Coin Train while talking to us. I'm paying attention, Dick. You don't need to... Is that a new power-up? Also, there's a scene in the middle that is just like straight out of a sitcom. And I need you to see it because I'm still confused. I've watched it twice, and I don't know what I don't know what happened.
This is gonna sound like a really stupid question. What the hell is that?
That was in my dryer when I went to put my clothes in. It's a sack of rats.
Somebody left it there?
It was just sitting in my dryer. I thought it might be a little bag of socks or something.
Is it disturbing? Yes, horribly so. This will gloom your days to come. Next doc. The Emperor's Naked Army Marches On is probably the left field doc in this lineup. I was sat trying to figure out what I should be doing for like 25 minutes. Not to say the doc is bad, but as a blind watch, I thought I was just watching this maniac live his day to day, and I didn't really know if there was a point. But here's the story. Kenzo Okazaki is a World War II veteran, a part of the 36th Division. If you know your history, I sure as hell don't. Don't let me of all people tell you. But the invasion of New Guinea resulted in terrible loss for Japanese soldiers. Surrounded and cut off in a blockade, disease and starvation ran rampant. The Japanese would eventually surrender, and Okazaki would be one of the quote-unquote lucky ones to return home. And Okazaki is a very complicated man to follow through the doc. He actually served 13 plus years in prison post-war for killing a man, shooting a sling of 4 lead pellets at the Emperor, and spreading pornographic flyers of the Emperor. He heavily mourns those who senselessly lost their lives at the behest of the Emperor, and now he just kind of despises authority. He damn sure doesn't fear them, I'll tell you that. The main goal at one point ends up being to uncover the truth of what happened to Private Yoshizawa and Private Nomura, rumored to be shot and killed by their own captain, Captain Koshimizu, on the charges of being deserters, after the Japanese had already surrendered, painting more of a murder than a lawful execution. So this man travels Japan and confronts ex-sergeants, corporals, medics, doctors, and Captain Koshimizu himself trying to piece together what happened. Even at one point bringing along the siblings of the fallen soldiers to join him in uncovering the truth. Now, Okazaki isn't a journalist. He isn't penciling in appointments with everybody. He's just showing up to their houses with a film crew and begins interrogating them. And my guy's stern. He is going to speak to you. And not only that, if you refuse to answer his questions, he will fight you. He does not care. The police are called multiple times, and I obviously am not familiar with Japanese customs in the 1980s, but Okazaki just spends all of his time hoeing the officers. Yeah, we called you, but get the fuck out. nosy. Look at him, just yelling at them. Do something, I dare you guys. As he's slapping the truck's ass. Try me, you bots. Like, it's a noble thing that he's doing, right? But he definitely toes the line on morals. Like, this man walks into a hospital room of a man who just had an operation. It doesn't look like he can move all that much. And Okazaki is just like, just so you know, this is divine punishment because of your post-war life. You deserve this. I'll hopefully talk to you again soon. Keep in touch. And he does. Post-op. My guy can't even control his bladder right now, but I don't care. You're pissing me off. He's a legit scary man because he has nothing to lose. He's ready to go back to prison. He'll resort to violence as long as he believes the end result is good. But then it's weird because he's randomly funny. He's a bit of a smartass. With the siblings of the fallen soldiers by him, he's demanding this family restaurant let them talk to their grandpa who was a medic. And they're like, nah, but his back is hurting. And he replies, nah, it's better than being dead. This is a 2-hour doc, and I can't really complain about the runtime. You have to see just how relentless Okazaki really is. If you drastically shorten these conversations, you lose that. And listen, if I'm to tell you the conclusion and how we got there, I am going to dump detail after detail after detail. This is the most notes I had to take and it was not close. I've watched this twice and I've barely started grasping who is who and why it matters. It's just too much lore and not enough for me to add to it. I'm not even saying this like, oh, you gotta watch it, I guess. Is it interesting? Absolutely. Do I think a lot of you will like it? Not really, but if you demand a summary from me, we'll leave here disappointed without one, might even tussle with me if I don't. I'll tell you a very bare bones version of the ending. It's clearly more impactful in the documentary, but here it is. It seems that the answer Okazaki was looking for was cannibalism. Some said the two soldiers were accused of being deserters, but at the end of the day, as their groups became smaller, starvation, disease, desperate times called for desperate measures, and everyone was on the chopping block. Apparently, troublemakers and selfish soldiers were in danger more than others. So there was a firing squad gathered by Koshimizu with the doctor on scene, and Okazaki actually speaks to everyone involved. Some of them initially lying to him that they were not a part of it. Koshimizu telling him that he wasn't even there. Even though many others said that the firing squad shot, the men did not instantly die, so the captain walked up and shot them both again. Keep in mind, these executions occurred 23 days after the war ended. The siblings didn't even see this out with him, although their guesses at what happened weren't far off, as they both believed their siblings were cannibalized simply because of hierarchy, the privates the first to go. But they didn't see this out because of not being able to see eye to eye with Okazaki. Hell, the director had issues too. Stopped filming multiple times. This was apparently not an easy man to work with. And as we wrap up, we get the headline, Okazaki opens fire. Ex-officer's son wounded. At the end of all this, Okazaki went to kill Koshimizu. However, because of circumstance, or maybe who just happened to open the door, Okazaki shot his son instead, although he wouldn't die. But Okazaki would head back to prison for another 10 years. Is this disturbing? No. I think this is the least disturbing of the lineup, for me at least. A bizarre entry, but welcomed. I also quickly want to address that people will often suggest very popular, disturbing documentaries to me. They're ones I've seen, so I'll usually try to do documentaries I've never seen for this series. However, two examples are like Abducted in Plain Sight and There's Something Wrong with Aunt Diane. If you guys want, I can cover those. I can gather up those really popular suggestions and just hit them in one episode, but I'll leave that up to you. Shout out to my beautiful patrons for supporting me monthly. They get exclusive videos. I got more channels down in the description. Code MrGG 10% off at GamerSups. And as always, I am Mr. GG and I am out. Bah.